Hello, hello, everyone. My name is Lee Rondon Davis. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm the leader of artistic curation and marketing here at Crowded Fire. Welcome to the first night of our solo performance showcase. We're so excited for y'all to check out this amazing work tonight. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that I am zooming in from Huichin, which is the unceded land of the Lishan Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people, who are strongly present on their land, which is unceded and which we have colonized and settled as Oakland. Our offices and our performances happen on the land of the Ramaytush Ohlone people. To support the indigenous communities that still exist on this land, please, we invite you to check out the Segura Te Land Trust over in the East Bay. And if you're in San Francisco or the Peninsula, you can check out the Ramaytush Ohlone and support their Unikin land tax. I'll drop those in the chat in just a moment. And thank you all so much for being here. We're super excited. It's been a long time since we've done a live stream, and now we're on two new platforms, Facebook and YouTube, which is super exciting. And we are doing all things solo performance for 2 nights this week, which is really exciting. We just concluded our solo performance intensive a couple weeks ago. And this is a part of Crowded Fire's larger initiatives program, which is to support local artists and their craft in many, many ways. So we offer an audition intensive. You'll hear more about the solo performance intensive. We have the Ignite Fund for designers and technicians happening now. It's a huge grant to support you and your craft. We have our Resilience and Development Playwriting Lab. We have mentorships and internships. So all of that is to support local artists and leaders in the Bay Area. And so we hope that you check those out. To speak a little bit more about the audition and solo intensive, specifically the solo intensive, I'm thrilled to pass it over to Dawn Monique Williams and M. Graham Smith, the amazing stewards of our intensives for many, many years. Welcome, Graham and Dawn.
Thank you, Lee, so much. Hey, Graham. Graham, you're still muted.
Thank you so much. Hey, Dawn, how's it going?
Good. That's us in class too. Like, Graham, what are you doing?
That's the way we roll. Hey, I'm M. Graham Smith. I'm so happy to be sharing this platform with Dawn tonight and all of these incredible solo performers. And maybe we should talk a little bit about kind of why solo performance for us, Dawn, and our own trajectories with solo performance.
Absolutely. As Lee said, I'm Dominique Williams. I, like Lee, am in Huichin, the home of Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone folk. So most people, I think, Graham, probably know both you and I as directors. And before I was ever a director, I was a performance poet. So that's how I got my start in what we might call solo work. So while I do not continue to perform solo pieces, I think of myself very much as a generative artist. And so I was compelled to join you on this endeavor because we share that strong belief that actors are generative artists.
For my own kind of solo journey, I trained at the Del Arte School of International Theater, where we did a lot of solo performance. And then as I started my career as a director, I was doing less and less performing. And then one day, an actor came to me and said, "Would you help me develop a solo show?" And it was such a fulfilling, amazing experience that actor Kevin will be on Thursday night's broadcast to talk about that work. But I've been doing a lot of work with actors who are interested in developing material into solo performance, and I find it so meaningful because it does straddle that sweet spot for me between generative work and helping an actor interpret text once that text is established. So maybe we can talk a little bit about why we got so passionate about teaching this workshop. We've alluded to this idea that it's really wonderful when we understand that actors are creators and not just interpreters. But I also feel like there's so much gatekeeping in our theater ecosystem that solo work is a great way to bypass that. We don't need a theater to tell us that we can make something. We can just go make it.
Exactly that. And I'm a performance scholar, and so many of our great actors Whoopi Goldberg, Dale Orlando Smith, Anna Devere Smith. Like these are writers who were sort of struggling to find inroads to get cast, and so they decided to develop their own work. And so that is a tool that I think all actors, especially actors of marginalized identities, have available to them to leverage.
And of course, now, at this moment, we're all kind of moving through a moment where theater is really kind of fallen on some economic hard times. We see so many of our theaters struggling. And the great thing about solo work is that it doesn't cost that much money to, to create something that is a viable and wonderful kind of theater at its most essential form. You don't need $1 million set. You don't need a waterfall. You don't need some chandelier crashing onto the stage. You just need an amazing performer and a story to tell and an audience to listen.
And in all its multitudes, the possibilities are almost endless, right? Like the work can be autobiographical, it can be verbatim theater, it can be text-based or not. We discovered with the participants that it can look a lot like stand-up. It maybe can be stand-up, or it can feel like a editorial. Research, interviews, it can be like an ethnography. So there's so many directions that the generation of solo work can take. And I think we're going to tap into some of that tonight.
Yeah, the participants in the lab had also a wide range of this, and we're going to see a lot of examples of their work tonight. And so, just to give people a little bit of a preview of coming attractions, we're going to show a few clips that are like 5-minute nuggets from these participants. And then we're going to chat with three amazing established solo artists whose work has been seen around the US and internationally. And we're going to ask them about what drew them to solo performance, how they make work, and what they're creating next.
Yeah, and then we'll wrap up with three more pieces of participants from the lab, and then we'll tee up for the broadcast on Thursday, which will be completely new set of participants, like you said. That's our evening.
Great. So, are these first two clips? These are 5-minute clips from our solo performance lab. The first one you'll see is from Lena Sibony, and the second one's from Audrey Schultz. Let's roll those clips.
When I was 16, I auditioned for the role of Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof. I know, but I really wanted the role. I was brash and rebellious, and I knew that if given the chance, my take on tradition, as untraditional as it would be, could be, should be a challenge worth taking on. A woman should be playing that role. I should be playing that role. I had for it, and I didn't get it. They offered me the role of Yenta. How was I supposed to change the world with Yenta? High school was almost over, and my time was running out. As you might already be able to guess, I spent the majority of my childhood performing in musicals. Despite my short stature and range of acting ability, I was cast over and over again as the old lady, the villain, the mother. I was mature. A word thrown about incessantly when I was growing up. You are so good at talking with adults. You just have this mature sense about you, you know. You would make a killer Mama Rose. Who says that to an 11-year-old? I wore it as a badge of honor. I could toe the line in relationships with my teachers, my friends, other adults in my life. I was a hell of a 12-year-old dinner party guest, and you know what? I felt mature. I was the most eloquent 13-year-old. I knew what I wanted, and that year, it was the lead in the summer camp musical. Better yet, an age-appropriate role, and I got it. In the first week of rehearsals, the director molested me. And time stopped. And I didn't feel mature. I felt like a child, a scared, overwhelmed small child. What should have been joyful was now laced with fear. I spent the rehearsals not knowing if something would happen again, taunted by this man, dysregulated by his now emotional outbursts towards me. You just weren't on in rehearsal, Lena. It's like you were on another planet. Why can't you just do better? Forced maturity so young made me angry. I was an angry kid. A slamming doors, yelling, screaming, throwing things I most definitely should not have been throwing. Angry kid, it seemed to just burst out of me in a chaotic fire. Memories of my small body radiating with indignancy, sitting smugly on the steps of my house, knowing that if I didn't move, we couldn't go anywhere. As I got older, the fear of showing my anger morphed into an ever-present panic that I didn't know what to do with. So I dutifully continued to play the adults. I let myself believe that I was letting my pain go, dramatically disperse on stage while I sang, "What Would You Do?" the old landlady song from Cabaret. The summer after my failed attempt at fiddler, I met my fairy godmother, Peter Mentor, Eva Marie. Tough as nails with a heart of gold, and she saw me completely and utterly, saw me as an artist, as a person, and for the first time, the panic lessened. Lena, you are the whole package, and you've got time. So I take my time. And 7 years later, through a series of fortunate events, I was cast as the lead in a new musical the week rehearsals started. Chaotic, fast, but an age-appropriate role. I dived in head first. Dance rehearsals, music rehearsals. I didn't take a moment to breathe. I felt the panic rise again, but I was too busy working, rehearsing, sleeping, eating, dreaming, working, rehearsing, sleeping, working, rehearsing. I get a call that Eva Marie is sick in a hospital across the country, and I am working, rehearsing, not eating, not sleeping, not breathing. She died on the day we worked on our big intimacy scene for the show. As we gently touched each other in that black box theater, I wondered if my scene partner could feel the grief radiating off of me. There is no time to take. I carried on and the panic set back in. I spent opening night rationalizing to myself that if I could just get through the next scene, I could run off stage any moment. I wasn't actively saying something. My heart was beating out of my chest. I spent intermission hunched over, forcing myself to breathe. We got a rave review in the SF Chronicle, and I cried alone in my room, relieved and devastated that no one could see how pain and fear had overtaken my body. I got through the run of the show working, not eating, not sleeping, barely breathing. And this time I didn't move on. I stayed stuck, lost in the grief of losing Eva Marie, lost in the grief of the thing I love most, being on stage, filling me with dread. I was 13 again, 16 again, but with no youthful rebellion to push me forward, no tradition to fall back on. When did she get to be a beauty? When did he grow to be so tall? Wasn't it yesterday when they were small?
To clear up comments I saw on Twitter, and to be the bright bastion of light for men in these dark, trying times. There is nothing women can do better than a man. And that's the truth. Now, I'm going to need the women in the comments to take a really deep breath, because I know it can be really hard for you not to be overwhelmed by your emotions. Teaching, I hear you cry out in the comments. Most teachers are women nowadays. Yeah, because all the men left their teaching jobs to pursue bigger callings, like stocks, important things. Nursing only happened because men left to go fight in wars. Don't get me started on acting. Women weren't even trusted to play women roles when theater became a thing. And when they were, it was done by the whores and sluts, the really inspirational kind of people. Women only think they can do these things because men left them for them to pick up the scraps. And your jobs are scraps. Ever notice how a job becomes undesirable after women make up most of its workforce? It's because you taint them. Nobody wants a male nurse and be labeled effeminate, and for good reason. He should strive for something greater. Men are doctors, they're not nurses. The only thing women can do that a man can't is give birth. And our biological design dictates that that is the only desire we should have. So, newsflash, all you whiny women out there, it's okay, you don't need to use your brain. You can get a lobotomy and you can still fulfill your big purpose of being the fleshlight of your poor, poor husband's dreams. Sorry, did I make you mad? Well, that's okay, because that's my point. Your anger means nothing because it's true. Women are stupid. I like men. I love men. I think they're the greatest. They actually get things done. Like my dad. He's a plumber, and he does really good, hard work for his community. And me and him agree that women are the worst. It comes up with my mom a lot. You see, she's a nagger, and God knows there is nothing worse than a nagging woman. She cries a lot, overdramatic as she is. So my dad would always say, he would say it in a funnier way though, if you want something done, do it yourself, bitch. I'm off the clock. That's what he would always say when I was in the room. And my mom always nagged me too, so I agreed with him. We would always get so annoyed when she would cry, her crocodile tears like weak women like to do, and say, oh, I feel like I'm never being listened to in this house. Yeah, we know, because we're ignoring you. My dad says he's grateful that at least one woman in the house doesn't make him want to tear his ears off. And I think that's a huge honor, because I personally can't wait to prove him right when I grow up to be a great wife and mother after witnessing all of my mother's shitty work. Why are you looking at me like that? I'm not the problem. God, I'm just telling the truth. You're the problem. See, my interests are actually respectable. Oh, you over there, you like ballet? Oh, how's that attention-seeking attitude working out for you? Oh, and you're the sporty type. Well, hate to tell you, people don't watch you because they actually think you can achieve anything special, because the best male athlete will always perform better than the best female athlete. They tune in so they can stare and jack off to your body.
All right.
Yeah, let's give it up. This Zoom thing is still hard, so let's show some love in the chat. Our participants are watching, they're standing by, so feel free to participate in the chat if you want to show some love, drop some emojis and things of that nature, just to let them know that you're with us.
And now we're going to turn from our presentation of those little nuggets of work that are coming out of our lab for our 30-minute conversation with our esteemed panelists about the state of the art of solo performance. So really quickly, I'm going to introduce our first panelist. Madeline Sayet is an award-winning director, playwright, and performer. Sayet's accolades as a theater maker include being named a Forbes 30 Under 30 in Hollywood and Entertainment, a TED Fellow, a MIT Media Lab Directors Fellow, NCAIED Native American 40 Under 40, a recipient of the White House Champion of Change Award from President Obama, and many other honors. Her solo play, Where Do We Belong, has toured the US and abroad.
And Lisa Wolpe, in addition to being one of my personal heroes and a titan of the theater, is an international activist working for the empowerment of women and diversity on the stage. She was the producing artistic director of the all-female multicultural Los Angeles Women's Shakespeare Company from 1993 to 2016. And two of her many honors include the LA Drama Critics Award for Sustained Excellence and the Sidney Berger Award for Excellence from the Shakespeare Theater Association. Her play, Shakespeare and the Alchemy of Gender, experienced a long run at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival just this spring. And since then, she's already performed it in a handful of other places with more dates quickly approaching.
And our third panelist is Sayda Trujillo, an actress, theater maker, educator specializing in voice and movement, as well as devising original physical theater performances. Identity and storytelling inspire her personal work, as well as collective work with actors and non-actors. Her 3 solo shows, Banana Leaves, Definitely Oops, and I Was Raised Mexican, have been presented nationally and internationally at theater houses including La Mama, etc., Red Cat, and NYTW.
And just before we bring these incredible artists to the stage, we're going to give you a very brief amuse bouche of their work by showing some quick clips of some of their selected pieces.
We must all stand in love for the tribe. That is the only way we will survive. But what if we don't? What if in my lifetime we all just fade away? Then you will have to explain that to your ancestors when you face them. My name is Achukais. I'm a Mohegan. Most people don't like talking about colonialism as much as they like talking about Shakespeare. Today's story isn't about Shakespeare, though. Today's story is how I became a bird. I need a fresh start. Somewhere I'm not hated for being me. The settlers killed something in our souls when they took our language. I look at my wings, wondering if they'll ever work, wondering if they even know what they are. Can someone tell me where I'm going?
They don't care about balance, stability, community, peace. They care about women.
I've been trying to remember a story. A long time ago, our ancestors told it to us. I think it has to do with where we belong. In the sky, one world might be clear. The closer you get to something, it's always more complicated on the ground.
Ground your feet. ثبتوا رجليكم.
Piece of work is a man. How noble in reason, how infinite in faculty, in form and moving, how express and admirable in action, how like an angel in apprehension, how like a god. The beauty of the world, the paragon of animals. Oh, Hamlet.
He wasn't always so sad. But there is something rotten in the state of Denmark. Hamlet is in a profound state of interchange. Old school revenge tragedies are open and shut cases. Hamlet is looking for a third option. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind.
Oh my goodness, friends. Oh, welcome, welcome, welcome. So much gratitude to each of you for agreeing to participate in this panel tonight. We're going to jump right in. I'm going to come to each of you in turn. I know you all come from different performance backgrounds, training, histories. I would love to learn what led you to solo work. And I'm going to go in the order that we showed the clips. So I'm going to come to you first, Maddie.
Okay. Well, I guess first of all, Chanatiwisa Chokais. Hi, I'm Maddie. I'm a citizen of the Mohegan tribe in Connecticut. And the moment I came to solo work, it actually came out of a moment of having been really interested in oral tradition. I didn't necessarily think that I was going to start performing solo work. I think that the way of processing the story, though, I had seen some instances recently. I actually seen Lisa's play recently at that time. I had seen some traditional storytellers sharing stories as well. And I was just thinking about what does it mean to sort of, in this way that's been done for thousands and thousands of years since the beginning of time, to share certain things together in a moment in community that need to be said, and how by doing so in community, you know, you and the community put these stories together in unique ways that then become a thing that is it feels very of the moment in a very specific way. And so when I originally wrote my solo piece, Where We Belong, I was sort of investigating that and what that meant, to sort of share moments from my story, moments from ancestor stories in this sort of traditional storytelling framework. And then I think I sort of accidentally came to solo work as a medium by realizing what that sort of reciprocal relationship is with the community over time after that. So I think now.
Thank you. Sayda, what was your journey to solo work?
So for me, solo work came as I was an undergrad at CalArts, and I loved being, I knew I wanted to make theater for my life. And being there, I had great mentors and I was really invested. And then as I came into the upper level years, the third and fourth years, it's the time in the conservatory where you get cast in shows. And I was being cast in shows, and I felt like there was a part of me that I felt like I wasn't giving everything I wanted to give as a performer, or the stories that I wanted to tell. And it was very intuitive how I came to solo work. I remember approaching my movement teacher. Also, English is my second language. And at the time when I went to CalArts, I was 18 years old. And it was the first time that I was in an all white environment where I had to speak English all the time. And I really heard my voice, I heard my accent, and I felt really like terrified. And I approached my movement teacher because I always felt like the body tells a story. And I said to him, I want to make a show. And I had seen a few shows. I had seen, as a 16-year-old, I had seen Anna Devere Smith's show at the Taper. I had seen on video John Leguizamo's first solo show. And I, even though my work is not like their work, I knew that there was a way to tell a story, to make a play on your own, to tell a story. So I really came to my teacher and I said, I have these images of, like gender roles in Guatemala, and I want to write a play about these women. And he said, let's do it. And I started to write plays that were in some ways autobiographical, and all the shows that I've written since are sort of an exploration of this of voice. So I'm a voice. So then I become a voice person. I studied voice, and then to me it's all together. To me, solo work feels like an extension of voice. Like to me, voice is not a method that you learn. To me, voice is, how do you take space and really feel the ground under you, and you tell a story in ways. So I'm interested in solo work that that explores the language of theater through the body. And because, as Graham mentioned earlier, you can do it even when you don't have any money. All of my shows have like one object, you know, whether it's a bucket or a blanket or a ladder. And I find a way to tell a story through the transformation of those objects, and also the way the story changes because of who I'm telling it to. So that's how I came to solo work.
Thank you, Sayda. Lisa, what was your journey to solo performance?
It was about 20 years ago. I got an MFA at Goddard College, where you can write your own curriculum. And the motto of the school is "at the heart of your mind." And I already had a big body of work that I'd created, and I already tried to influence the theater world to hire women and to let people of color that were female play leads. And then I was working with all male companies, and then I was working with trans people. And then I got tired of LA and the 99-seat theater thing. I got the MFA, but really I became a scholar at that moment. Every 3 weeks we'd write 20 pages and send it in, and then the advisor of our small cohort would write back 9 pages of feedback. So, and I'm still doing it. I've done it for over 10 years, but like Maddie said, it's a kind of an honest place to say your own words. It's an undefended place where your body tells the story. I'm also exploring gender. I'm exploring the afterlife, which is magical, through poetry, which is ancient, and making it my own through autobiographical transformation. And then we always do a talk back afterwards, which brings in community. And I think being seen in that way frees me from all of the limitations of the United States idea of what theater is, and has brought me to be a global citizen in a real way. Because it doesn't even matter if they can't speak your language, they can see the authenticity in the body mind. They can hear it in the voice when we do it elsewhere. So it's become a really great vehicle. And also when I went to this MFA program, they said to me, you are not allowed to do public practice. You were always doing things for 50 or 100 people. You have to do something by yourself. So I did a whole semester just on intimacy, writing a poem every night to my advisor, and she would write one back for a whole semester, because people were worshiping me when I played Hamlet and crushing on me, and it was weird. And I didn't want to be applauded and idolized at all. I wanted to be understood as a human being. So I wrote something very liminal with all the big questions, with none of the splash of playing Hamlet or Richard III. Just deep, deep questions that I live with that nobody would talk to me about. And as a result, thousands and thousands of people have had this conversation with me about the afterlife and about suicide and about legacy and about many of the things that I bring up in 55 minutes. But it was Laurie Woolery that helped me cut it down to 55 minutes. It was 2.5 hours of depth charge, because I'm a very serious, sort of Germanic, deep person who's suffered a lot of trauma and was working through grief. Again, it was a question on stage, you know, my relationship to it. But I don't ask for people to produce it. They come because it's inexpensive, but also because the community effort at community building from some old white lesbian, you know, like we're all trying. But yeah, I've been doing it for over 10 years now.
I'm hearing some real themes emerge: oral tradition, the poetry being ancient, the voice, so orality, the idea too of learning from the generation above you, right? So Lisa, you influenced Maddie. Sayda, you saw Anna Devere and John Leguizamo. I'm really interested. Lisa got us on this path, telling us about how at Goddard she was writing 20 pages a week. Maybe I'll come back to you, Maddie. What was your generative process? Where did you start?
Sorry. Okay, I am muted successfully. Yeah. So for me, my generative process was really specific. It was at this moment in How Are No Policies Neutral, and I was trying to figure out if, as an Indigenous person in a globalized world, if there is a place where I get to belong. And so I just started to kind of grapple with that through writing. And for me, the very first form of that was like just a 20-minute piece that truly was not meant to be seen by anybody. It was for like it was like immediate family and closest of friends. In that draft, it was like a confession. It ended with me. The structure of my solo show has to do with a transformation journey in which is related to my Mohegan name, Ashokais, which is a blackbird. And there's a transformation journey of becoming a bird, but that very early version, I never came back down from the sky. And so it was really me trying to process what it meant to, when I came back this time, not feel rooted the way that I always had to my homeland, but feel like everywhere I went, I had this different perspective that I had to make sense out of through my culture and try and find a way to understand. And when I wrote it, hope it's not freezing too much. Okay. When I wrote that first draft, well, one, actually, originally what happened was my mother saw like a thing of it online and was like, what is this? Should I come to it? And I said, I don't know. I haven't written it yet. And because I knew I like had to get something out, but I hadn't actually processed it. She goes, well, it says you buy tickets. And so I was like, I mean, I really don't know. I had this habit at the time that no matter what it was I was doing, I would make sure there was an event so that the thing had to come out in some way, which I do not recommend as necessarily a healthy practice. But for me in my 20s, that was how I thrived. And at that event, what ended up happening was the people who were there were all so deeply moved by it that then it started to sort of carry on its own life internationally, actually. And then it came to this country, just because I think the depth with which I was asking questions that were of such extreme importance to me forced other folks to sort of think in a similar way. But for me, it was very much just about grappling with questions. It wasn't like I had no desire to perform it. I got stomach ulcers the first time I performed it, like in the UK, right? Like I wasn't thinking like, oh, what a great idea to share all my personal things in public with a lot of people. I was like, oh, that's terrifying. Now I understand its merit, but at the time, like I was a different person, I think, in a lot of ways than I am now. I think that it strengthened me in a lot of ways, having to do that over and over again in community and understand why we have to tell stories in that way. But for me, generating it was very much a process of sitting with questions, sitting with stories in my own life, sitting with who in my own life I would need to take with me in order to answer those questions, to grapple with those questions, what ancestors had similar journeys. And really for me, honestly, because a lot of it came out of me dropping out of my PhD, a lot of it was sort of the process of creating the work artistically that I couldn't do academically with my actual doctorate. Realizing that actually the things that I needed to say and the things that I needed to talk about, I had the tools
to work. What does your generative process look like now?
Thank you. So I continue to work from this place of the body, but now I know a lot more about that intuition I had, 20 plus years ago, which is about a lot of my work. The theme of my work has to do with this making peace with my roots being in the air and making peace with belonging to many places. My parents, Guatemalan, left Guatemala in the 70s during the war there, and they went to Canada. And so I was born in Canada. And then we returned to Guatemala. There was still a war going on, and came to LA. And so I grew up in Guatemala, Montreal, and here in LA. And so there's this, as I am becoming a theater maker, there is this, I'm still very curious. The pieces are more like they live in my body now, but for a while there was this pulling from different directions of feeling like I didn't belong. And then I came upon the work of Gloria Ansaldúa, who writes about Nepantla, which is a Nahuatl concept that means in between. And I came across this when I was in grad school in the UK, and it became this notion of in between as a very real place, when all my work had to do with borders and broken identities and pieces here. And Nepantla now is the place where I create from, really feeling this messy place as the source of stories that really need to be told. And so I begin in that place. And even though they're all different shows, they're all exploring a different part of what it means to be whole in your body, what it means to make peace with who you are. And a lot of my work, all of my work really blends physical theater. I also studied at Del Arte International, like Graham did. And so I really was empowered during my studies there in terms of I'm going to make theater wherever I am, from wherever I am. And so I think all my pieces are physical and also have song. So there's this combination or integration of the voice and the body as the main the main part. But something that's shifted that I can reflect on. When I first wrote my show at Cal Arts in the mid-90s, I realized now that even though that show was about my grandmother and my aunts and the women that came before them, I was creating solo work that in some ways was being translated for a white audience. And I can see now how it just breaks my heart because I'm still, I'm creating different frameworks now to create work where I don't feel like I have to translate. It was important that I wrote these shows in that way because I was still holding on to who I am. But I can see it so clearly now. And so the way my work has shifted now is that I don't feel I have to translate it. I'm really honoring the stories, and the places where the stories are coming from. So I think I'm answering the question.
Absolutely, absolutely, and stunningly so. Lisa, how did you go from this 20 pages a week with your advisor to then a 2.5 hour show to what is now Shakespeare and the Alchemy of Gender? What was that generative process?
Well, sometimes it's funding. There was a woman from a foundation called Gaia who saw an all-female As You Like It that I did. And she had her assistant call me and say, I run a foundation for women who are very tired, who spend their lives serving other women. And I see you and I want to give you a month off. And I'm going to give you a month in Provincetown in your own house, give you $600 a week, round trip airfare, and you don't have to do anything, you have to show anything. And that's where I wrote the play. I just had a month to myself in my own house with the computer through the benefactor of this person that I never met. And then my friend Margaret Van Zant, who runs the Provincetown Women's Theater Festival, said, I'll give you $1,000 if you do it for our opening season next week. So my hair went white because it was really a traumatic story, 2.5 hours without an intermission. And then eventually I cut it to 90 minutes. I got this $25,000 grant from Whittier College to bring in designers, and I did a background and projections and sets, and I did a 90-minute version. I was thinking I'll take it somewhere. Do you know what I mean? And then all these projections, and then I was invited to take it to the Stratford Festival after a scholars conference I went to. And they said it has to be 55 minutes if you want to do a piece of it. And that's when I hired Lori, and we worked together for a month or two and just redacted everything that wasn't my personal experience or my central question, which is my father's soul is not at rest. My father committed suicide after trying to right the wrongs the Nazis did by murdering his whole family. And that cycle of violence, which is represented so beautifully in Shakespeare all the time, I have played and played and played as I stepped into my father's shoes in all these male roles. So then I did it in Canada at 55 minutes, and then I took it through the United States and then to Europe. So I've done it at many of the Shakespeare festivals. I've done it in Europe. I was just asked to be the guest artistic director for the Verona Shakespeare International Fringe Festival because I did it there 2 years ago, and they felt so much. And then the Germans invited me to come and direct a show there because I did it there. and they felt so much. Do you know what I mean? And so I've been back to Bremen, and I've worked with the Turkish clowns and the Black dancers from the Ivory Coast. And, you know, in Italy, my job will be to pick 5 productions from all over the world that are revolutionary and make one myself for the next couple of years. And I'm deconstructing a play-on version of Othello with Wayne T. Carr as Othello and myself as Iago and Kate Vogt as Amelia.
Oh my God.
All the white guys are going to be multimedia projections. And then there'll be 5 onstage actors that will tour it to Germany, to Italy, to Prague, and maybe.
How can I get in on this? You and Wayne and Katie Vogt? Oh,
right?
Stop it.
Because at this point, I'm like, what will bring me joy? What is community in Los Angeles now that I don't have a theater company? I want to work, and because I've done 8 or 9 of the play-on things, and because I work internationally and I see translation all the time now, I'm much less rigid than I was 20 years ago about the language art of it. Much more interested in the European poesy of the visual art, the poetry, and the intuitive dream work that they do on stage. And then to create interchange between all of the countries, because we go to Shakespeare Theater Association. I hope, Don Monique Williams, you might show up at that conference.
I will be there. Okay, I will be there.
Because, you know, Maddie's probably exhausted with it. But we've been trying to build international theater corridors for a long time. And Maddie's played at the Globe, and like we play all over the place, and it helps for empathy, it helps for listening, it helps for cultural differences. Like they never have Black actors play Othello in Europe. They think that's too easy, and they don't have any Black actors. So I think we're going to kill it just by doing a 90-minute deconstruction of American racism in an election year so horrific that everyone I know is practically reeling. I mean, there's so much to talk about. And the alternative would be just to go to Costa Rica and live in a hut and write for myself. But I still feel like I have just enough energy to keep working on it, because it's exciting to see you guys who are my friends who I know, and to meet Sayda and just see how do we all continue, you know, what can we all do? But that is the flight of the solo show. You can meet thousands and thousands of people without having to coordinate dozens of people. And it's impossible right now to pay people at the level that they need to be paid. So
I hear that. Wow. Thank you all so much. As our time winds down, I want to say, Lisa, I would come and visit you in your hut in Costa Rica. But I want to, I thank you so much, Sayda, for introducing me to this Nahuatl term about the in-between, because you all, the focus tonight was on solo work, but you are directors, you're writers, you're scholars, movers. It's just a tremendous group to be in the company of tonight. So thank you all so much for giving of your time this evening. It was definitely an inspiration to me. So for our viewers, if you want to go ahead and show some love again in the chat, let our panelists know what you thought. We are going to conclude this portion of the evening and get Graham back out here before we launch into another set of participants. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
That was
Graham, how jealous are you?
I am so jealous you got to be in the room with those 3 amazing artists. I find myself just feeling so fortunate to be listening to this conversation tonight. It's exactly what I needed to hear at this moment. So big thanks to all of those artists. And please go see their work if their work comes to a place near you. They're just as amazing in real life as they are on your stream, I promise.
Well, Graham, you know what I always say, compersion. So be happy for me that I got to experience the joy of that conversation. And now we've got 3 more clips from our solo performance lab artists to share with you. We have coming up Linda Scaparotti, Ipsheeta Furtado, and Bria Cooper.
I'm Linda Scaparotti, and this is Swearing In. It was the biggest day of my life, what I had wanted since I was 10 years old, to be sworn in as an attorney in the rotunda of the Massachusetts Supreme Court. It seemed an impossibility, given my family and financial circumstances. No one had gone to college. Many hadn't completed high school. Some still lived like they were in Italy in their enclaves, and the rest were in deep rural poverty. And yet, there I was, proudly standing in my black robe on those 200-year-old enduring Italian marble floors. Oh, the real prisms hung from the chandeliers. And yes, I was surrounded by the next generation of blue bloods. But I was there, and that's all that mattered. Suddenly, into the chambers came 2 guards who announced that we'd have to move the ceremony. And could Linda Scaparotti come with them, please? My God, I looked around, hoping they didn't mean me, Scaparotti, but I followed them out, every step echoing with the pounding of my heart. And there, in the middle of the foyer, was my father. He looked so small in the cavernous space, surrounded by guards, wearing his one suit from Filene's bargain basement, his shoes polished, hat in hand. But he was screaming in a space where people spoke in hushed tones because of the reverberations. How dare you bring that whore here today? She did nothing for you, nothing. I did everything. No, Daddy, I didn't invite her. Dawn brought her. I did invite you, but you acted like you didn't care. You never said you were coming. Oh, I started off in dulcet tones, trying to plead the lion back into the cage. But he went around and around and just telling me all of the tragedies of his life and acting like I was responsible. I don't even know if I'm your father. I don't know that I'm any of your fathers. And you're old enough to know now you're the oldest. You can tell your sisters. Sisters. What are you talking about? You told me that I had to go live with my grandparents in the country and couldn't live with you because I was sickly, that I was going to die. Well, let me just tell you, growing up with them, I did almost die. And what have you done for me? You and Mother abandoned me. And you didn't support me. I've had 2 jobs since I was 14 years of age, always at the top of my class. I earned all my scholarships. I got myself here. So you can just go and fuck. I stopped myself as I watched the black robes parade by, now attorneys, going into the rotunda to meet their clapping families. I had missed the entire swearing-in ceremony, the very thing that I had worked so hard for in my life up till that moment. And my father turned then, didn't say another word, didn't apologize, and made his way through the phalanx of guards. And I watched him straighten up and wrap his scarf round his neck very carefully. Oh, against the cold, yes, but also against all that he had endured, all the pain that he had masked with anger. I watched him leave, never turn back, always moving forward, alone. And in that moment, I knew without a doubt that he was my father, or rather, that I was his daughter. I received my certificate of admission to the Massachusetts bar in the mail 2 weeks later.
Hi, Nisha. What do you have today? I'm so excited. Yeah? Going back to work is getting you excited? Oh my gosh, yes! Who would have thought? What do you miss most? Honestly, I've not really been processing the news very well lately. Like, I haven't seen anyone, and all these crazy headlines pop up on my phone, and all I have is no one to talk to who forms complete sentences. Was it your mom helping out? She's here visiting, right? From Chicago? No. I sent her home for bad behavior. Wait, what do you mean? Yeah, she kept forcing me to put these clothes on Kiki and they didn't fit. She was like, don't waste just because it's too small. I was so confused and she wouldn't listen to me. So you kicked your mom out of your house? Well, I got Jeff to do it. He just told her that we didn't need her help anymore. How about when you go back to work? It'll be fine. We're getting a sitter. Maybe they'll listen to my instructions. They definitely won't yell at me in another language I can't understand, so that's a win. That way I can make sure we get Kiki into a language immersion school. Important. Suraya, I can't have my kid not speaking my mother tongue. I just can't. I won't be able to forgive myself. But you don't speak it. It's okay. She'll be so proud. My mother will come and visit and yell at me, and then Kiki will fling it right back at her. It'll be the most majestic war between generations. I'll have devised the most spectacular match. Just wait. Your tiny little army. And I won't rest until I've conquered her spirit. I will prevail. I am mother. Is that still a thing? Am I using that correctly? You're gold. And then once I've vanquished the beast and saved myself from the prince, with my prince, we'll frolic in the forest and live happily ever after. The end. Yeah, you sound like you could use some adult conversation. My prince is Jeff in my might and shining armor. He dispelled the beast the first time, but now I shall finish her, and once and for all. Now who's behaving badly? Paloache, everything good? Sure. Kotobolo, what's been said? Well, where to begin? One complaints, Ache. Everyone's whining, huh? Can you blame them? Ano ang nakabala sa kanila? What's bothering them? Firstly, stop listening to everyone else who's not your children. We care so much. It feels horrible when you don't believe us. We're adults. We're trying to make good choices, and frankly, the choices you're making are weak given the options that exist. Ano, Baba, what else? Next, you've had your shot. You did this before. You don't get a vicarious do-over. You can't presume to know our pain and prescribe our medicine. They come and I feed them and I listen. I don't ask them to tell me. And every time I miss you. I hate that I can't blame you for feeling crummy. I remember doubting that you were proud of me when you were here, but I don't believe it anymore. You wouldn't have said I love you so many times if you weren't happy with how I turned out. Every time these little sandwiches get made, I can feel you next to me. I can hear you humming like you do, out of tune. I have no idea what song it is, but you're humming it, and it makes everything better. Thanks, Mom. Your love gets eaten all the time. They feel better than they get nourished. They remember to love you back.
Do you know what it's like to be prepared for the end of the world? I think I'm starting to. I used to make fun of doomsday people. I mean, like, not out loud, just in my head, like, openly scoffing at people who order things with their zombie apocalypse kits on the internet. I mean, I once saw one being advertised at a once-in-a-lifetime investment of $799.95. With that type of money, you could just go on a trip or a spa day like a normal person to distract you from Zombieland doomsday hell. And maybe, like, not be so worried about zombies invading your home in the middle of the night and eating you. I mean, we have The Walking Dead for that apocalypse fantasy to play out, but in general, I just think we're way too comfortable being prepared for doomsday. But hell, maybe I'm just uncomfortable. I never thought about it too deeply and realized those kinds of people and their existential dread are literally everywhere. I mean, think about those questions you get when you have to do that dreaded icebreaker. It always goes something like this. If you were stranded on a deserted island, you could only bring 3 items. And somehow one of the rules is that you can't bring your phone, even though our phones are all glued to our hands nowadays. Anyways, and if you can only bring 3 items, what would you choose? And it's not like I'm an unprepared, oblivious person who doesn't believe in being prepared for things, but I just think my answers are more practical than most. For example, my hypothetical survival kit would include 1. Water purification tablets so that I won't drink the water on the first day, get sick, and die. 2. A flare gun so that I could get the heck out of there. And 3. I would bring a hatchet because it worked for that book Hatchet they made us all read in 4th grade, and I don't know if it worked for that kid, it could work for me. But I think my problem with questions like that is it's just the overall fetish for the end of the world. I don't think I understood its logic until now. My doomsday came on an unassuming Thursday afternoon, a FaceTime call with my parents, my siblings, and they asked the question, what will you do when we're gone? What will happen to B? Who's going to take care of him? My heart freezes. And not in the sad way that you must think. I actually think B and I would live a great life together. Twin and twin taking on the world. In that moment, I remember the promise I made myself at 7 that I would always protect him. Because the world is not always kind to kids with autism. And as his older sister, and maybe it's not a technicality, but I am older by 20 minutes, it counts. I always assumed that B would just live with me. And I was so confident in it that I told my mother so, as confident as a 2nd grader could be. But now, I feel my brain being hardboiled by one sentence, that one question. The assumption and inevitability that time will pass, and one day, my siblings and I will be what's left to hold each other up. I'm totally floundering and floating on this pile of what ifs, because what if I have to face that day? And the truth is, what if is not what if, it's really when, it's really when. And what will I do when doomsday comes? And listen, I'm not some asshole. It isn't doomsday because one day I might have to take care of B. It's not about autism at all, really. I could care less about that part, which may sound crazy because, trust me, I care a lot. That's just not it. It's being completely unprepared for that event to happen, for this irreversible transition to take place. To face the truth that loss is inevitable. So the doomsday clock ticks on and on. Not exactly over my shoulder, still on my mind. You know what? Maybe everyone else is right. Perhaps it's time to get a survival kit of my own. Think this bag is big enough?
Wow, wow, wow. I'm such a proud mama right now, Graham.
These pieces, I mean, after just 3 weeks of generation, these pieces started to come to life, and it is so cool to see them continue to grow in these performances. Let's get some love in the chat for these last 3 pieces, and we're at the end of our time, so some love in the chat for the whole evening. Um, I have to say, that conversation with those panelists, I'm going to be thinking about that for a long time. And maybe this is a cool moment to let our audience know who's been watching live that if you want to watch it again or share it with your friends, you can. It'll be archived there at both the Facebook Live and the YouTube channel. So you can definitely share this with other people or go back and check out moments that you want to hear again.
And we definitely want to give out some special thanks here, Graham. We definitely want to thank the amazing folks behind the scenes at Crowded Fire. A special shout out to Lee Rondon David and Riley Allison. Riley was behind the scenes all night. You never saw them, but they were there keeping the stream moving. And we hope people will join us again on Thursday. Entirely new program, but the same place. So where you tuned in tonight, you can tune in again at Thursday at the same time. And we'll be joined by a different panel made up of solo artists John Gentry, Kenny Yoon, Kevin Rolston, and Armando McLean.
It's going to be a wonderful conversation. There's going to be all new solo performances in these 5-minute nuggets that you saw tonight. Join us.
Good night, everyone. Thank you so much. See you Thursday.